Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 17th Versio Film Festival. I'm Borbála Csukas, the industry coordinator at Versio, and I'm very honored to present you Peter Kerekes. Peter is a director, producer, and teacher. He teaches at the Academy of Performing Arts in Bratislava and at Doc Nomads in Budapest. His films had been screened and awarded at festivals like Karlovy Vary, Hot Dogs, Jihlava Film Festival, Doc Aviv, and I think I could keep on going, but it's better if I give the word to Peter. One last thing, I would like to say to the audience that you can leave your questions on Facebook and on the website as well. And I will be collecting them and I will read the questions to Peter at the end of the masterclass. So thank you, Peter, for being here, and I will give you the stage.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you that you came. I would like to ask Bori, how many people are online, because I cannot see. I see only 3 of you, the organizers and myself. And I have no idea if I'm speaking to 1 person, 3 person, 15 person.
Let me see. I will tell you in a second.
Okay.
So 9 people.
9 people.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, we could discuss it before, but do you think that there is a chance that I can see them, or it's your settings are that no?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I will watch myself, which is a little bit strange during this. Well, usually when in somewhere in the middle of my speech about the documentary film and discussion, because actually I think the documentary film is a dialogue. So now it is quite strange that I am having a monologue, because I need a Mitfahrer in German. I need a co-player, somebody that I can play with. But I will try to do my best to have this monologue version as well. So speaking about documentary films, I studied fiction film in Bratislava. It's a Soviet model school where in Academy of Performing Arts, in the film department, there are separate departments for documentary film and separate department for fiction film. I started my studies very young. Basically, I was 18 when I entered the university, and I started fiction because I thought that documentary is nothing serious. For documentary, you just take the camera and film something. So it was not really the art for me. And first 2-3 years, I was making complete terrible pseudo-experimental and pseudo-avant-garde films. And one of my biggest artistic achievements through the years are that I had the chance to sneak to the school archive some years ago and secretly destroy all the copies of my first fiction movies because they were really terrible. There was one moment where I got the first chance to make a documentary film. It was really just by accidents. There was some free slot in television, and they said they need to fill up 26 minutes of time with some cultural program. And actually, I had the idea for a place that I wanted to make film about. But until that time, I was also quite a bad student, so I had no experience from film history. I had just only very, very, very basic knowledge about documentaries, and I got this possibility to make a film. It was set in a lunatic asylum in an old monastery. The monastery was very close to my hometown, to Košice, and it had a beautiful history. It was a Baroque monastery, and the communists kicked out the monks in the 50s, and they made a lunatic asylum from it. So there were people with mental issues. And after the Velvet Revolutions, the monk received back the monastery, but of course they couldn't kick out the people with mental issues. So they made a deal. The half of the monastery will be for the Premontre monks, and the other half of the monastery will be for the people with mental issues. And the garden and the church is common. So it was a film about a very closed world. It was called 3 Days in Monastery Asov. The first day they bring the milk, the second day they bring the meat, and the third day they are taking out the corpse, the dead body of one of the patients from there. I had this idea, but I said, okay, I have to go to the place and I have to get the knowledge to write the script. So I was working there as a volunteer more than 6 weeks. I got known the people there. I knew all the patients by name, made some friendships, and based on my observation, I wrote a script, what we are going to film. Several weeks later, we came with a very small film crew. There were 3 of us, and I wanted to film what I already experienced before. But in the moment when we set up the camera, all the people from the whole lunatic asylum, all these mental people, just came in front of the camera and just were staring on us and didn't move. They were just staring on us because we were the interesting. Because we had the camera, it was 60mm camera, quite a big crew, the guy with the boom, and they were just watching us. And I just thought that, okay, like we want to make this observational film, like the things have just to move, like we will just watch. And of course, we were waiting first day, and they were always just watching to the camera. We were waiting second day, and they didn't get used to us. And on the third day, because I had just 7 days of filming, I started to direct it. I said, you are going to run in the corridor, you will singing here. And basically, I started to recreate the world that I had in my memory. Everything what I experienced during these 6 weeks when I was working there, I redirect and basically create the documentary reality in front of the camera. And I was so proud of myself. The images were beautiful and film is quite fine. And coming back to the school, telling to my colleagues from the documentary department what a wonderful method I invented. And they just answered, Peter, we see that you are a very bad student. This was basically invented by Flaherty. This is the beginning of the documentary film. So basically by this mistake and this misunderstanding was my first entering to the film world. But I started to like this method so much. I started to like the possibility that I can basically play with the film language much more free way than, much more liberal way than in a fiction, that I'm not so much stuck to the story, that I gave up making fiction films and I was continuing with documentary films and made the documentary film as my diploma film as well. Maybe it can be encouraging for some of you or for students. Sorry to being so personal, but maybe it can help somehow in your projects and in your thinking of the films. I finished the studies in 1997, and basically it was a time of a quite little bit light, but still dictatorship in Slovakia, when we had no working film fund, when we had no chance to work for a television. And basically, as a filmmaker, I had no future in my country, or very, very small future in my country. Never mind, I decided to stay. It was a time when my grandfather died, and I spent quite a lot of time with my grandmother to make her not so sad. She was sorting the family photos, the family papers, and telling wonderful stories about grandfather, and also wonderful stories about our family. And to make her a little bit more happy, I promised her that I will make one day a film about our family and a film about grandfather. And I started to collect the stories, but I didn't still had no certain idea what the film will be. It will be about the family history, but how I'm going to mental it, how I'm going to set it. And then my grandmother told a magic sentence. It's basically in the beginning of the film. I will show you the clip, I will share the screen, and then I will continue.
Tudod, Péter, az én édesapám, Krisztiánő, a te dédapád, nagybányai születésű volt, ott is nőtt fel, ott dolgozott aztán egy állami hivatalban, és fiatal korában neki is nehézségei voltak a légcsövével, úgy, mint neked most a Prieduskival. Aztán orvosai tanácsára elhatározta, hogy elköltözik Nagybányáról, lehetőleg a tengerhez, hisz ez az osztrák-magyar monarchiában akkoriban lehetséges volt. Tudod, aztán elhatározta, hogy beadja a kérvényét, és be is adta az illetékes helyekre, de legnagyobb meglepetésére nem a tengerhez helyezték, hanem Kassára.
Stop.
Mondjam azt is, hogy azóta senkinek se sikerült a családból a tengerhez jutni?
Nem, az olyan túl direkt, olyan egyenes lenne. Én azt szeretném, hogy azt a néző a filmből megértse, hogy erről van a film.
Hát akkor mit mondjak, hogy...
Okay, so this was the original idea of the film. My grandfather was born in a Romanian city. It was Austro-Hungarian Empire at that time. And he was moved to, instead of the sea, to Košice, which was that time the empire, then Czechoslovakia, then Slovakia. And he never made it to the sea. And my grandmother said a wonderful sentence: if you cannot go to the sea, you have to be happy with the swimming pool. So I had an idea that I will make a film about the swimming pool of my hometown, which can be basically a model of the world. Our family never made it to the seaside because when the Austro-Hungarian monarchy fell apart, my grandfather didn't swear to the new republic, so he was resigned as a military officer, so he was out of money. Then the city was again Hungarian. He was again an officer, but the war started, so he couldn't go anywhere to the seaside. Then the war ended, and of course it was again very complicated to travel, especially for them. So instead of the sea, they had to be happy with the swimming pool. I said that it can be a very nice model of the typical Central European destiny when you are living and you have passports of 5 states, but you never move from your city, as my grandmother did. And basically the big history is just marching through your hometown. So I decided to settle the film on the swimming pool and to combine the family stories with the stories of people that spend their life basically on the swimming pool. I started the research. I wrote down for myself all the historical important turning points: the Second World War, the liberation of fascists, the 1968 occupation, Soviet occupation, and all these points. And because Košice is actually quite a small city, and my family is living there for a long time, so everybody knows everybody, I started to research and to find people that had some interesting stories related to this turning point, but they happened on the swimming pool. So, for example, what was one of the most complicated things, in 1941, the city was bombed by the Soviets. Maybe nobody knows who bombed the city, but the city was bombed. It was not such a big disaster. Just several people were injured and killed, but it's not a big bombing. But I wanted to find a person, because it was in summer, who was on that day swimming on the back, watching the sky, and saw the airplanes. And it was really a huge research. And finally, we found a lady who actually had this experience. So it was really very nice. Also, we were searching people that they met in the swimming pool and they married, and then the husband had to go to the Second World War, during the Second World War, to the front and never came back. Or people that were on the swimming pool during the Soviet occupation in 1968. During my research, I was not filming anything. I was even not, most of the times I was even not recording the sound. I had just my notes. I was sitting in a wonderful coffee house of my hometown, eating cakes, drinking coffee with pensionists, and just listening to their stories, and writing, putting notes. And after a wonderful summer, actually for me it was not a work, for me it was much more a vacation. Actually, it was something where this film started because I wanted to make not so sad my grandmother after the loss of my grandfather. And this film was something like a therapy for me as well, because I met so many beautiful pensionists. So basically I was replacing my dead grandfather by them somehow, because I was at that time very young and just, 25 and listening their stories. So it was still this grandfather or grandmother grandchild relationship. And of course, well, I will tell it later. So this relationship. So I was collecting these stories, and when I really had a big pile of notes, I just sat down and wrote it down. And I was telling in the beginning that in this time it was really very complicated to make film in our country. It is important because when I started to write these stories down, I knew that I will never get funding for this film. So I said to myself, if you cannot film the film, you have to write it. So I tried to write down a documentary novel, a short story where are the stories of the people, but also the moments, the impressions of the swimming pool, all my thoughts. And basically, I wanted to make a feeling that if the audiences or the readers are reading it, they will have a feeling as they are watching the film. It took me really quite a lot of exercising and a lot of trying to find the exact way, but I think I succeed. And at the end, I didn't film the film, but I wrote it down. And it was published in several literature magazines in Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, Czech Republic, and so around. And suddenly people started to call me that, why are you not filming it? I said, well, situation is bad. We do not have money and so. But they started to support me. And then we had an important government change and the film fund started to work. And my project was one of the first of the list that we got funding from the renewed kind of film fund. It was not a big budget, but for me it was perfect because I could buy a 16mm film material. We were not filming on video. And basically 70% of the budget went to the 16mm film material. We rented a camera and a small apartment in the center of the city. The deal with my crew was that they will work basically for free. Everybody got 40 liters of Tokaj wine from my family. That was their salary. And I promised them that I will feed them. So I was cooking breakfast and dinner every day. And we spent a wonderful month in August 2001 on the swimming pool. It was basically a vacation. We were working. The swimming pool is opening at 10 and closing for the public at 5. So between 10 and 5 we were filming. It was quite a relaxing time. What was for me very important and what really helped me a lot, because the film is quite a complicated structure. The film is following the history of my family and swimming pool from the 20s when the swimming pool was built, through the Second World War, the occupation of the city, the liberation of the city, the 50s, the communist terror, the Soviet occupation in 68, and then the 70s. So there are so many lines. There is a line of the family, there is a line of the swimming pool, the line of the city, and the line of a certain people. So it was not really easy to film it, that it will be not a complete chaos. I wrote down a very specific technical script where basically I wrote down all everything what these people told me during my first meetings, during the research. Quite often when I'm telling it, my students are asking me, yes, but were you not afraid that the people will lose their spontaneity because they already told you this story? And my experience is that first, the old people are saying all the time the same stories, all the time the same way. The second thing is that if they are surprised by something, and this surprise can be just the film camera and the crew, or if they are set to a different environment, if they are not telling the same story at home again, so if they are in the swimming pool or so, then the spontaneity will be there. But to not having just talking heads in my film, I decided to turn the past to present times and try to make some action. So not just to tell the story. I know that theoretically to describe it, it's very complicated. I will show you an excerpt and maybe it will be better understandable. So enter full screen, share.
Myslíš si, že by sa to mohlo stať aj teraz?
Myslím, že dnes je všetko možné.
Ismerünk is olyanokat, akik itt ismerkedtek meg, és házasság lett belőle, például Smidl Magdi Szarvasi Lacival, Itt ismerkedtek meg a strandon, és hát nagyon sok ismerőség. Bremer Joli. Itt ismerkedett meg a férjével.
Ezen a képen, amit itt bemutatok, 1942 nyarán lett fölvéve itt a kassai uszodában. A képen ott vagyok én, mint fiatal mennyasszony, a két nagyon jó barátnőmmel és a vőlegényemmel.
Emlékszem rá, egy olyan csinos, magas, fekete, jóképű férfi volt, katonatiszt.
A vőlegényemmel naponta kijártunk ide az uszodába, ahol nagyon jókat úsztunk, és élveztük a víz frissességét.
Az érzelmek itt keletkeztek, hát az egész világegyetemet ez tartja fönt, hogy minden egyesülni akar, és a legkisebb kőtől, legkisebb atomtól kezdve föl az emberben csúcsosodik ki az, hogy egyesülni akar a két nem, és ez benne van az egész világegyetemben. És ezt úgy nevezzük, hogy ez a szeretet, ami az emberiséget összetartja, és az egész kozmoszt összetartja.
Tehát az uszoda a világegyetemnek egy olyan kis modellje.
Egy kis atomja volt.
Vagy egy modellje?
Egy modellje volt.
Hasonmása.
Hasonmása?
Igen.
Gondolja, hogy találhatnánk itten az uszodán valakit, aki hasonlít a férjére?
Nem hiszem, mert tipikus egyén volt, mokány alakkal, fekete hajjal, fekete bajusszal és élénk fekete szemekkel. Kevés van. Elmúlt az ifjúság. Végigmentem itt, de nem találtam hasonló férfit az én megboldogult férjemet. Egy kis hasonlatosságot találtam az itt lévő kameramannal, akinek a szemei olyan élénkek, mint a megboldogult férjemnek.
Jste mali koľko rokov vtedy?
23.
A váš, to bol vtedy ešte frajer, nie?
Frajer. Tak o 9 rokov starší.
No taký skoro jak ja.
No, však hovorím, teraz môžete byť my v duchom.
Môžete.
No a uspievame sa na seba, že jak nám dobre je tu na, že ideme pekne ruka v ručke a tešíme sa, že sme v takú pekno.
Poďme posledný chlapi na to vidieť. Nežarli ste na vášho muža?
Nemala som času na žiarlivosť.
Ľavo, hop!
So this is a story of a woman who met her husband at the swimming pool. It was a big love. They married. And then the war started. They were married basically in the beginning of the Second World War. And he was conscripted. And 6 weeks after the wedding, he left and he never came back. He's missing in action until today. In the film, I have a very strong interview with a woman when I'm asking her how she's dealing that her husband is dead, and she started to argue with me that he's not dead. Officially, he's missing in action. So until the moment she's getting a proof that he's dead, he's still alive. And for me, it was such a powerful moment that basically made me to think in the film when we are dying, and basically our personal death and the question of death started to be an important topic of the film about the swimming pool. So I was dealing it with other stories. I will later show you an excerpt again about this. So basically now you had a chance to get a slight overview that how I try to manage the interviews. There are strong stories, but I always try to find some interaction. I always try to find some small happening, how we can film these strong stories. My experience was that it helped me very much that the whole film was very well prepared in literature, that basically it was written down in advance. But this preparation was very useful for me, that in the moment when I started the filming, I just could throw out the script away and I could improvise. Because I knew what I want to film, I knew all the connections between the scenes, because I wrote it down, these research stories I wrote down manually because I didn't give it to any assistant. So through my muscles, the story came to my brain. So I knew basically their stories, and also the way how they are speaking, the way how they are making jokes. I knew it basically by heart. So the communication with them was much more easy. Also, we were filming on 16mm film. It means that in one film box, you have 10 minutes of film material, not more. So the longest take you can do is 10 minutes. Also, 1 meter of material is $1. So basically, it makes one, the old camera. So we could always listen when 1 meter pass. It's like, and actually you spent $1. So the interviews had to be very intensive. On the other side, if you push your protagonist and tell them, tell this and this sentence, you will lose the beauty of the spontaneous reactions. So you have to be prepared how to get from their interesting answers, but not pushing them. On the other side, not let them speak for hours and hours and then just hope that you will edit it somehow. Most of the films nowadays are made in this way, that basically, especially interview-based films, that the protagonists are just sitting and speaking hours and hours, and then the directors are just cutting out something. But I try to really compress the time, like as you are eating sushi, you have something small, but you have everything there. And I really wanted to have this compression in each question, in each dialogue. So to squeeze the material in one shot, that the interview will be interesting. So what they are saying will be powerful, but also the setting, the framing, and also the background. So basically we tried to direct everything. Sometimes the directing of the background was that we were just waiting and watching what's happening and put the protagonist in front of it. Sometimes we were just really directing it like in an action movie, like, these children, please, here's the ice cream and jump to the water when I will give you the sign. So we, again, recreated this crazy feeling of reality of the swimming pool, and everything is happening around and you just don't know where to concentrate. This was the mode that I tried to make in the movie. Of course, it was quite tricky because I didn't know if my experiment will be successful. I invented this way of filmmaking for myself. Of course, a lot of filmmakers made it before, but I invented this style for myself. But I didn't know if I will be able to make this connection with the people. Like you ask the old lady, please, can you find somebody who is similar to your missing husband, and how she would react. My personal experience is that the people love to play. What is the worst thing for documentary protagonists is when you come to their houses with a camera, with a sound engineer, with a camera assistant, with a production assistant, so 4 foreign people come and invade their homes, and then you just tell them, please react as every day. Just don't mind us and try to pretend that we are not here. It's such an absurd situation, you know, like you are never drinking your coffee together at morning in your small, tiny flat together with 5 other people, you know, like you. So basically they have to invent how to act themselves. And usually it's not good. Usually you are working with a small camera, and you are a very long time with the protagonist, like in the wonderful Hungarian movie The Woman Capture from 2 or 3 years ago, when the directress was permanently with her protagonist, and it was a relationship between of them. So basically the protagonists are forgetting that there is a camera. But when you just come for some hours or days, if you are making a mosaic film and cannot be with them so long time, like usually it's a disaster. But when you put them, the protagonist, to a unknown situation, if you ask the guy to stand on the roof with 2 half-naked women in the background, for him it's such a new experience, so he is acting authentic, because in new experience we always acting authentic. So I tried to make a playful movie. I tried to play with the people, and to be honest, they loved it. There were 2 situations when they said, no, I will not take part in this game, and I fully respected it, and we filmed it in a different way. But usually I had perfect sparring partners, and they were really enjoying it. And most of the time, they were even giving me more ideas that I was able to invent. Now I will show you a second excerpt from the movie. It's quite a long one.
Swim in the water, it would be nice in the water.
Po vojne ešte niekoľko rokov vládlo také heslo na Slovensku po slovensky. Tu Košičania veľmi neradi počujú také heslo. A tak v podstate nedivu, že každý, kto sem prišiel na plaváreň, tak sa cítil ako v azyle. Na ulici sa dalo kontrolovať, či niekto hovorí tak alebo tak. Ale na plavárni to sa stratilo. V plavkách to nerozoznáš.
Mohol človek kľudne nemecký, francúzsky, anglický, maďarský, slovenský, český. To bolo internacionálne, to absolútne. Toto bolo práve dobré. Človek prišiel sem ako nejaká oáza.
My sme s Milanom Podsedlým rozvíjali takú tzv. Bazénovú teóriu. Tá tkvie v tom, že keď sa človek narodí, tak má od Pána Boha pridelený jeden bazén plný alkoholu. Ale škoda, že nikto nevie, aký veľký bazén má a kedy ho už vypil. Potom je už koniec. Vypitý bazén.
Mal som takú stávku, že kedy mi ešte raz v živote vrátili pivovar, tak tento malý detský bazén tu naplním s pivom a pozvem všetkých svojich kamarátov sa okúpať s pivom. Ja Bohu, to už nie je realita. Nikdy v živote. V Košiciach pivovar je...
Keď sa človek narodí ako decko, je v malom bazéne. Trošku sa naučí plávať, príde do stredného bazénu, aj z toho vyrastie a pôjde do veľkého, hlbokého bazénu. A potom ide na pivo a s pivom iba potom prejde zase do detského bazénu s vnúčatami. A ešte by si trošku začvachtal, ale už potom príde záverečná. A jemu sa nechce, ale záverečná je koniec.
Vy sa kam ponáhľate naspäť? Ďakujem pekne.
Ďakujem. S tým smeroval.
Asi tým bude lepšie.
Dovidenia.
Čo sa stane s človekom, keď opustí túto plaváreň?
Tak ide plávať do veľkého mora, pravdepodobne.
Čo to by všetky sú?
Tie pohyby v bruchu, tak je to také spomalené, také zlaté veľmi. Chodiaca plaváreň? Môže byť aj tak.
Čo sa stane s človekom, keď zomrie?
Keď zomrie, že by išlo zo vzduchu do vody. No neviem, ale myslím, že duša ide skôr do vzduchu ako do vody. Telo ide do zemi.
Trošku sa naučí plávať, príde do stredného bazénu, aj z toho vyrastie a pôjde do veľkého bazénu.
Kedy sme tu boli spolu naposledy?
Myslím, že presne pred rokom. Ešte nemá rok, o týždeň bude mať rok.
Ako sa volá?
Katarína. Katka. Áno?
Čo si myslíte, kde je teraz pán Jonec?
Tak neviem, niekto je veriaci, niekto nie je veriaci. Áno, je možno, že sa práve pozerá na nás hora, jak to pekne sedíme a sa usmieva a že možno, že nie, a možno, že áno.
Keď veríme na karmu, možno začal nový život.
Plavci po smrti?
No ja pevne verím, že vo vode. V akej vode, to ešte neviem. Alebo v inom živote, ale snáď predsa len vo vode.
Bolo by pekné, keby sme boli, ako ona hovorí, v druhom živote ako žaby. Pretože sme boli stále vo vode a to je ako pekný život.
Okay, this is a little bit longer excerpt. Of course, it's a little bit complicated without knowing the context of the film. But we filmed this film in the period of 3 years, in 2000, 2001, and 2002. Of course, a lot of things happened. The baby that we filmed the pregnant woman that we filmed in 2001, and we had a dialogue that a pregnant woman is basically a walking swimming pool because the baby is swimming inside of her tummy. And next year, we filmed already her daughter, who's nearly 1 year old. And unfortunately, Mr. Jonec passed away. But the film is dealing not just with the historical part and the stories of the family and the stories of my city, but also it's dealing with the memory, like when we are really dying. It's really a paradox because this film is nearly 20 years old slowly, and these people are still alive in the movie. The man in the interview who looks a little bit drunk, it's my father, and he was after the stroke. That's why he's speaking in this way. And he passed away 15 years ago, but he's still alive in this film. My grandmother still alive in this movie. And one of the important messages of the film is that our life is basically the life, it's waves. We are creating waves. Like either you are creating waves in the water, that's why the water is so important in this movie, and we are creating waves. So maybe with this film, I can inspire some of you of different thinking about the filmmaking. So I create something like a wave, and it will move you to make your own movies, and with your films, you will inspire other people. And this creating of the waves basically are something, the essence of our lives, due to my very amateur swimming pool kind of philosophy. When I was doing this film, I had no obligations. We got funding from the film fund. It was quite modest, and there were no expectations. We got 2 broadcasters on board, but basically they gave us only laboratories and rental of the film camera, so no cash. And they also had no obligations, so I was completely free. I had no commissioning editor up on me who was saying me how I have to do it, and we could really freely play with the film. I was a producer myself of this movie, and when we finished it, I thought that we will make a premiere in my city. I will show it to my grandmother. I will fulfill my promise, and that's it. But it was quite a funny thing, this film that is super local. It's dealing with historical knowledge of a small city in the center of Central Europe, where you have to know all these complicated political backgrounds. The jokes are bilingual, and I thought nobody out of the borders of my city will understand it. Somehow happened that the vibes of the swimming pool were working also in other countries, in other cities. So this film was traveling through more than 100 film festivals, and the people in Argentina, we had screenings in Japan. They were really like smiling on the same places as the audience in Košice or in Budapest. So for me, it was really a big surprise. And there I realized that this phrase that I always thought that it's a cliche, that if you want to go global, you have to be local. I realized that it's really true. It's a very local film dealing with stories just from the local people. Basically, it's a family-based story, and not trying to import their so-called big issues, and but film that's made by heart, and I think that's one of the keys that it was pretty successful worldwide, and the people still remembers it somehow. So these waves that I wanted to create, they were created and they are working. the method. You had a chance to see a little bit of the method, how I was dealing with the protagonist. You had a chance to see how we tried to make the camera work. For me, it was very important to plan everything in advance with my cinematographer. We were planning all the scenes, how we are going to film them. We tried to find the ideal concept for each scene, for each shot. It was quite complicated. We even, from the scene that you saw when they are just drinking beer under the trees, we had to use really big lights just to make the balance, because I wanted to see the swimming pool outside of the trees. It was too sunny, and under the trees it was too shadow, so we were bringing big lights for that, and it was really, like, from the fiction film, quite funny. And we decided to create with the camera the feeling that you are on the swimming pool. When you are on the swimming pool, you never can concentrate on the discussion, because you are always distracted with some other beautiful girls that you are watching, with other people. Kids are jumping up and down. So basically, with the camera, we wanted to create this feeling. I think we were pretty successful in that. There is another thing that, if you will have a chance sometimes to watch this film somewhere, that I try to create something what is a wonderful German word. It's called Gesamtkunstwerk. It means that basically the whole, every detail of the film have to be a small part of this artistic one thing. And every detail of the film has to tell the message of the film. This was how we were selecting music. In the swimming pool, you always have some cheesy music playing in the background. And we decided with my music composer to compose this music. And the pop music usually have some text. So we just stole the dialogues and monologues of my protagonists, and we made music from their quotes, and then made music out of it. So this was the way how we were creating music, camera work, and the editing and the other things. After finishing this movie, came, of course, the question, like, the people were pretty surprised, not so much used to humor in documentary films and so. And I started to work in a new film. You had a chance to see in the excerpt my father. It was the guy who was speaking about the swimming pool full of alcohol. And my father was an excellent cook, and I used to spend a lot of time with him. And every time when I came home, we used to cook together and speak about stupid things, usually what men are doing when they are cooking. And I started to tell him that my idea is not to make films because it's too complicated, but I would like to be a catering chef on the set of the film, because it's really a beautiful thing. Everybody loves you. The catering chef is basically, in reality, the most important person in the film crew. And then we started to make very stupid and sexist jokes, like how the catering chef can change the mood of the film. You know, if you have a love scene and you just cook something full of beans and meat, and what can happen then, and making jokes. And I had a funny idea that it can be interesting to make the history of the cinema from the point of view of a catering cook. Like how the catering cook make the feeling of Godard films or of Truffaut films or Hitchcock films, like how to make the cinema history from their point of view. It was just a stupid joke, but I was still thinking about it, and started to think about it serious, that maybe not the film chef can be important, but the military cook can be important. Because if the military cook fuck up the soup, then the soldiers can lose the battle and the generals can lose the war. And I was thinking, what about making a film about military cooks? About responsibility of a small person towards to the so-called big history. In 66 season, I was showing the big history as was marching through the city and marching through the swimming pool. Now I was interested to find people that could somehow change the history. But we can change the history with our small things, with our small activity. A filmmaker has a huge responsibility because with our films we can create some message and we can create some opinions. But because I don't like these pathetic big words, I like models. So I decided to make a model of the world, not the swimming pool in this case, but now the model of the world as a kitchen. So I decided to research military chefs all over the world and find stories where the military cook could change the so-called big history. We wrote a logline: food, sex, and Holocaust is selling the films all the time. So we just had food here and military, so it was okay. The producers liked it, and we got really nice funding even for the development. So I had to settle somehow the kitchen where I'm going to cook and to decide where we are going to set the film, to set some borders. Miloš Forman, famous Czech film director, is saying that he can make films only on the places where he understands the jokes. But to make a film about military cooks, I had to think where I can understand the jokes. So we decided that we will go to the European history only. I wanted to film with people that are still alive. So when we started it in 2004, the research, there were still a lot of people that still remembered and were veterans of the Second World War. So I decided to make European history from the Second World War until the Chechen War. And we decided to research in countries that are basically part of my culture. And it's, of course, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Germany, basically Russia, Balkan countries. And the only exception was France, because I'm not speaking French. But of course, it's still the part of our European identity. So I decided to set the movie in these countries. And the question was how to find these military cooks. Because I'm based in Slovakia, or half Slovakia, half Hungary. But how I'm going to find military cooks for a movie from different countries and from different periods. I called all my friends that I met on the film festivals, wrote them emails, and said that I'm going to make this film, and I'm searching military cooks. And just to make the long story short, some of them, those who like the idea and those who basically made this idea like they're really very enjoying that they can be the part of the film. They started to work for me like researchers. They were basically kind of my extended heads and hearts, because they had to find these people and decide. And during 1 year, we found out 106 military cooks from Second World War, like German military cooks, Soviet military cooks, French, British, Hungarian cooks from 1956, Soviet cooks from the occupation of Czechoslovakia in 1968, Serbian cooks, Croatian cooks, Bosnian cooks from the Balkan Wars in the 90s, and Russian cook from Chechnya. And I decided to meet all these 106 cooks personally. It started a long journey that took basically 1 year. And the interesting thing is that from these 106 cooks, one was terribly boring. It was a guy somewhere from north of Germany, from Kiel, who just had a list of his life and he was just reading it. But other 105 people were really extraordinary personalities. And I made again the same work as I did in 66 Seasons. I was writing down the notes. Then I wrote down a script, and I selected the cooks not based on who of them had the most interesting story, because all the stories were somehow interesting, but I selected them toward how they are reading and listening the recipes, how they are reading and listening the orders. You know, in the military, you have to follow the order. And of course, sometimes it's good to not follow the order. Sometimes it can save you and other lives. So it was how you are, if you are a collaborator, if you are a partisan, if you are a fanatic fighter. So I basically found 12 completely different approach to life. And that was 12 stories of cooking history. I will show you now the excerpt of one from the beginning of the movie.
Das deutsche Brot ist das beste Brot auf der Welt, auf der ganzen Welt. Ich habe Lust, im weiten Feld zu streiten mit dem Feind, wohl als ein tapferer Kriegesheld, der treu und redlich meint. Wenn wir streiten Seit an Seit und die alten Lieder singen, glauben wir, es muss gelingen. Mit uns zieht die neue Zeit, ja, mit uns zieht die neue Zeit.
Langsam, Martin. Ja, das ist auch jetzt so. Oh. Oh. Oh.
Ist das jetzt wie in 39 in Polen?
Oh.
Ja, da ist schneller gegangen.
Oh.
Das waren noch Lieder aus unserer Jugendzeit. Und Jugendzeit will ich bis du so weit.
Što vi думаете? Какой хлеб самый лучший в мире?
Черный. Потому что он сытный и полезный.
Вы все фронты в Европе прошли, много хлеба покушала. В какой стране, какая нация лучше всего хлеб печет?
Да, наверное, одинаково везде пекут. Хлеб есть хлеб. Невзирая на нации.
Erinnert ihr euch noch an den Kommiss bzw. an das
Okay, so that's the beauty of a good preparation. During the research, I met Herr Weinhardt. He lives in Schliersee, close to Munich. And he was a baker all his life. He loves his job. And when I was asking about the bread, of course, he said that das deutsche Brot ist das Beste an der ganzen Welt. The German bread is the best on the world. And knowing this, that he's saying it, I asked the Russian woman what bread is the best in the world. And of course, I was expecting that she will speak about the Russian bread as the best of the world. And then comes this beautiful thing, it's a surprise. And she says, no, the bread has no nationality. Chlieb ist chlieb, the bread is bread. So basically, if you are prepared, the God will always help you and give you some nice surprises. But you have to know what you are waiting for. When making cooking history, again, it was based on personal stories. So I had a script where I wrote down what will the people do and what will they say. I try to match their cooking with their historical stories. In the first version of the script, I even didn't want to use archives. I thought that we can make this feeling what the archives are making us, the feeling of the war, the feeling of the bombing, the feeling of the snowing winter, that we can make all this just with associative montage, associative editing of cooking. But then when we had the final version, I decided to be more viewer-friendly and more audience-friendly and put the film archives there, which was, I think it was a good decision. And in 66 seasons, I could be in a permanent dialogue with my protagonist because I was home in all languages that they are speaking. But here, even I speak German and I understand Serbian and Russian and this. It's not my mother tongue. And I couldn't be so active in the dialogue. So basically, I had to give them more space to speak. So the camera couldn't be so moving as in 66 seasons. We decided to make it much more like a theater, to make a cooking table, a chef table, like a stage in a theater, and they can, in this globe of this theater, that means the world, which is the kitchen actually, they can act their stories, they can act their past. So this was the important camera decision, to combine the static of their speeches. We tried to use a lot of Steadicam movements in the moments when I knew that I don't have to actively participate with my translator or helper or assistant in the dialogues. Again, as you had a chance to see, I try to provoke the people in different ways. And my experience is that sometimes the people try to hide their real feelings. They try to hide what they want to say because they think it's not really politically correct. Going back to the Second World War, we have to realize that in the beginning, in 1939, it was the most beautiful time for these young men. They were young, they were strong, they felt the power. Of course, now they're speaking about it. It's something like they be ashamed that they took part in this big army that marched through the Europe. But in that times it was different, and I wanted to recreate somehow the feeling, for the audience and for themselves too, like recreate the feeling on 1939, on what does it mean to be a winning German. And we found this ramp, this Schlagbaum that you can see in the movie, and I asked them to move it like very naturally, and then came this provocative question: is it now like in 1939 in Poland? And then this wonderful answer: no, in that time it was much more easy, we were young. So you can play with the people. You always have to keep the balance, of course, like it's not against them, it's smiling with them, it's making the humor with them in some points. Of course, the task was much more complicated in telling the stories of cooking history, because the knowledge of the context was very important, especially when we were speaking about war in Yugoslavia. It was not easy to describe who is who and who is in what side, and so I will try to show you an excerpt how we solved it. We were filming with Branko Trbovic. Branko Trbovic is a personal food taster of Josip Broz Tito. He was tasting and checking his food if it is not poisoned. And when Tito died, he was still in his position, and he was a chief of the chefs of Yugoslavian Federation. And we will see the fall of Yugoslavia from the point of the view of the chief of the chefs.
'91. pa dalje, ono je počelo da se razgrađuje, počelo da se raspada. I sad se forsiraju te nacionalističke kuhinje. A kroz tu ishranu stvaraju se neke države, menja se vlast i tako dalje. Međutim, napravili su jedan deo programa kako sačuvati tu Jugoslaviju i pokušavaju sad predsjednici republika da bi se na tim zajedničkim sjednicama dogovorili šta mogu prihvatiti od svega toga, da bi se sačuvala ta bivša Jugoslavija, a šta ne. I tako su predložili da se sastanu svi, pa su počeli sa Splitom kod Franje Tuđmana. To je bilo 28.3.1991. godine. Tuđman im priređuje ručak, ali već počinje taj nacionalni deo. Tuđman im priređuje jedan nacionalni ručak, dalmatinsku pršutu sa maslinama, zagorske štrukle i daje im dalmatinsku pašticadu i voće. To je sve ono što je praktično čisto hrvatsko, što retko koji Srbin jede od svega toga, pogotovo pašticadu i ovo sve. Ali
šta da li su taj ručak Srbi jeli?
Vjerovatno su jeli, šta će drugo, pa mora se jesti, znate, tako da. Ali dolaskom u Beograd sad Srbi vraćaju taj deo. Međutim, Sloba zajedno sa suprugom priredio im jedan čisto srpski, da bi vratio onaj deo hrvatskog. Počinje sa kajmakom, zlatiborski sir, proje. Daje Karađorđevu šniclu pod tim nazivom. Sljedeća sednica se održava kod Alije Izetbegovića u Sarajevu i on im pravi ovako botane bosanske pite. Onda normalno daje begovu čorbu sa bamijama. Poslije toga daje pečeno jare i daje tupahiju. ja mislim da praktično i ovi jelovnici pokazuju dokle su oni stigli sa svojim dogovorima. Znate. Od svake sednice, od jedne do druge, bilo je više i nacionalizma, više raspada, više rasturanja i sve manje šansi da će se ponovo sastati i da će očuvati Jugoslaviju.
It was Branko Trbović and the using the food instead of archives. Speaking about the music, maybe you had a chance to listen it, and maybe this Balkan style music sounded a little bit familiar. When we finished this film, I sat down with my music composer thinking, what kind of music are we going to use in this movie? And he said very straight that it's a military film, and in the military film you need to have orchestra. Now, there is no military film without serious orchestra. Of course, we didn't have a budget for that, so I argued that yes, but this is just a small military film. And he replied, okay, let's have a small orchestra. So basically we had the smallest possible symphony orchestra. And thinking about the music, not to want it to have the music just like kind of emotional blackmailing, what is quite often used in the documentary films. You know, we are speaking about the Holocaust, so the strings are on. So we wanted to find really some reasonable music. And when I spoke with Herr Weinhardt, he said that during the Vormarsch, when they invaded Poland, they were listening on radio in the tanks, The Ride of the Valkyria by Wagner. So I said, well, that's wonderful. So basically, we used Ride of the Valkyries in different orchestrations. So we had a small symphony orchestra version of the Ride of the Valkyries. If you remember the first shot, the helicopter, it's there. Then we used the Ride of the Valkyries in this Balkan style. We used Ride of the Valkyries in Jewish klezmer style when we have a Jewish story there. And we had quite a lot of fun with it, and I think it's working. But then we had a big problem, like the film needs also some slow music, something like for the meditation, something that's not so moving forward, like it's not so aggressive like Wagner's Valkyria. And we are thinking what to put there. And then my music composer said a wonderful thing, you know, like the people are not black and white, the history is not black and white, and the countries are not black and white. So if we have a German aggressive Ride of the Valkyries, we need to have a German music as the meditative music as well. And we find Johann Sebastian Bach, a short suite that say, God, please forgive me. And basically with the combination of this aggressive forwarding music and with this meditative music asking for forgiveness for our sins, we made the musical bridge in the film. And it's with one small excerpt, it's the only music that we were using in this movie. We did different variations, but I think that the film is not just about sound and images. I think this film is very much about energy. So if you have a concept in the music, it is imprinted also in the film. And the audience even not logically feel it. Like a lot of people, they don't realize that this is Wagner because not a lot of people are music educated, but they feel it somehow. So you have to work on a lot of levels. And if your producer or whoever tells, yes, but nobody will understand it anyway, maybe they will not understand it by their brain, but definitely they will understand it by their soul. So I think it's very important to work in every detail in the film, that it will build your Gesamtkunstwerk, the holiness of the film. The film is based on 11 stories where basically one nation is fighting against the other nation. And I was searching the end of the movie. Because when we went chronologically, we started with the Second World War and ended with the Chechen War. And for me, it was still not enough. I wanted to have something universal. And during our research trip, when we were on the island of Sylt in north of Germany, I was thinking to film something there with the submarines, because it's in north of Germany, wonderful island. There is a military navy base in Germany. And I was thinking to film something related to the Second World War story with the submarines. And when we were leaving, the press officer who was with us, he said, "Yes, and are you going to meet Mr. Silbernagel?" I said, "Mr. Silbernagel, who is it?" And he was surprised that we don't know him. It was a military cook on the submarine who in 1967 or something like that, so after the Second World War, 1967, he was in a school submarine where future submarine soldiers were trained, and the submarine drowned, and he was the only one who survived. So we said yes, and we decided to meet him, and then we filmed him later on. The important for me was that finally I found the end of the movie, because suddenly Silbernagel is not fighting against other nation, he's fighting against destiny, he's fighting for his own life. So now I will show you the last part of the movie.
U-Bootsküche hier und wir sind ja hier auf der Marineversorgungsschule und da werden die zukünftigen U-Bootsköche ausgebildet und wie Sie sehen, es ist an für sich recht viel Platz hier drin, das bin ich gar nicht gewöhnt, also von unseren U-Bootsküchen her, das ist sehr, sehr luxuriös und dieses Boot, wo ich gewesen bin, auf dem U-Boot Hai, das war einfach, wenn man das mal kurz aufmacht hier, das war dieser Platz, mehr war es nicht gewesen. Also hier war ein kleines Waschbecken und hier waren 2 Herdplatten gestanden, das war die ganze Kombüse. Und hier hat sich schon der erste Schlafplatz angeschlossen, da haben sich praktisch die Füße verbrannt, wenn die Töpfe heiß waren da dran. Das beliebteste Essen, das war einfach ein Stück Fleisch mit Gemüse und Kartoffeln. Der Hai war ja ein Weltkriegsboot, das fuhr noch im Zweiten Weltkrieg und wurde Ende des Krieges von der Besatzung selbst versenkt. Und das Boot wurde 1955 wieder gehoben und auf der Werft instand gesetzt und dann für die Bundeswehr hergerichtet. Und wir haben es dann weiter in Betrieb gehalten bis zu dem damaligen Unglück dann. Ne? Also wenn wir so im U-Boot gestanden hätten, dann hätten wir gemerkt, da ist was faul. Ne?
Haben Sie ein Rezept gegen die Angst?
Gegen die Angst habe ich kein Rezept, das muss jeder mit sich alleine ausmachen. Der eine kann es, der andere kann es nicht. Ich hoffe doch, dass die Koteletts schmecken werden. Man kann es nie wissen vorher. Das war ganz einfach. Wir waren auf der Überfahrt nach England. Das war sehr stürmisch. Wir haben uns zum Abendessen auf Grund gelegt. Wir haben nur Abendbrot gegessen. Das gab kalt, Brot und Wurst. Das war fertig. Und wir sind wieder aufgetaucht. Das war alles.
Ja. Was war weiter?
Ja, was dann weiter war. Und während des Auftauchens, das Boot liegt ja dann ungefähr mit einem Winkel von 25 Grad, kam auf einmal hinten der Schrei aus der Maschine, Wassereinbruch in der Maschine. Und in dem Moment, der Kommandant war schon im Turm, der hat das Turmlug schon aufgemacht, weil der Turm war schon aus dem Wasser. Der kam sofort wieder runtergesprungen und hat in den Maschinenraum geguckt. Was er gesehen hat, das weiß nun keiner mehr, weil der Mann hat es ja auch nicht überlebt. Und daraufhin kam der Befehl, alle Mann von Bord. Er raste sofort wieder nach oben auf den Turm. Und wir haben uns unsere Tauchräder geschnappt. Den muss man ja immer dabei haben in so einem Fall. Den Tauchräder geschnappt und dann auch den Turm hochgeklettert, also von innen. Und wie wir dann oben ankamen, also wie ich ankam oben, habe ich gesehen, dass der Turm ungefähr so, wie ich jetzt im Wasser stehe, aus dem Wasser rausgeguckt hat. Also, und das Boot selbst war noch unter Wasser, nur der Turm hat etwas rausgeguckt. Und das war dann blitzschnell, da lief eine Welle über uns weg und hat uns alle, denn normalerweise hat, wenn es heißt, alle Mann von Bord, sollte man, wenn man oben ist im Turm, gleich aus dem Bord springen. Das hat aber keiner gemacht. Wir standen halt da und da kam eine Welle, ist über uns drüber gelaufen und hat uns allesamt aus dem Turm rausgespült. Und das nächste, was ich gesehen habe, war, das Boot hat senkrecht im Wasser gestanden. Der Bug guckte vielleicht noch so 3-4 Meter aus dem Wasser raus. Und dann ging es abwärts. Das war innerhalb einer Minute, war kein Boot mehr da. Wir waren mit 5 Mann im Wasser und wir sind dann möglichst lange zusammengeblieben, aber nach 4 Stunden bei dieser Wassertemperatur von 12 Grad waren meine 4 Kameraden alle tot. Bin dann weggeschwommen von den 4 und bin die Nacht dann eine ziemlich weite Strecke geschwommen. Immer mit den Wellen. Man muss ja, eine Richtung hat man ja nicht. Das war ja mitten in der Nordsee. Also an Land zu schwimmen wäre ein Ding der Unmöglichkeit. Das wären fast 200 Kilometer gewesen, also nach jeder Richtung. Es war utopisch. Ich war 14 Stunden dann im Wasser geschwommen, bei einer Wassertemperatur von 12 Grad und das überlebt normalerweise kein Mensch. Und damals haben sie mir gesagt, bei dieser Wassertemperatur wäre das höchste der Gefühle wären 4 Stunden. So, die Koteletts sind fertig.
Und für wen sind denn diese Koteletts?
Das ist für die unsichtbare Besatzung.
Okay. So that's Mr. Silbernagel. There was a wonderful thing during the shooting of this scene. It was a real military training base for German Navy. And we need quite a big bunch of papers to enter there. And when we prepared the filming, came a press officer who was in charge of what is allowed and what is not allowed to film. And of course, we had our food prepared, that we had our meat for the steaks, for schnitzel. And he asked Mr. Silbernagel if he has a paper release form from the doctor that he has no disease, so he can cook in the military kitchen. Mr. Silbernagel said, of course, he's in a pension, so he has no paper like this. And anyway, this cooking is just for film, so nobody will eat it. But the German press officer said, Befehl ist Befehl. And of course, he have to keep the orders, and it's illegal to cook in this kitchen if you don't have the paper from the doctor. But we said, yes, but we are not going to eat it. And he said, no, we have our orders, and without this paper, I cannot let you cook here anything. And because it was a terribly expensive place, the island of Sylt is one of the most expensive holiday resorts in Europe, actually. And we spent there, the big crew, because we were 8 people, spent there 3-4 days, and we had to film something. And I had a complete nervous breakdown. And I just said to Mr. Silbernagel, okay, just cook whatever, just cook some invisible things. I don't know, like just do something. You know, we are here, we have expensive equipment, we paid a lot for the possibility to be here, so just do something. Maybe I will just cut your voice and we will invent something, just do invisible cooking. And it looked really very awkward until the moment when he finished the invisible cooking and he showed me with the smile the plate. And I speak very bad German. I was working in Berlin when I was young in a restaurant. And I just remember this word, how you say invisible, it's unsichtbar. And I just asked him, for who is this invisible food? And he answered, it's for my invisible crew. It's for my dead friends. And then I realized, you know, like there is always some surprise that you receive. You know, just you cannot never give up. You know, like a normal filmmaker would say, okay, we cannot film here what I expected, or a normal filmmaker would just kill the German press officer and hide him in a somewhere in a shelf and to do it. But I was not forcing. I said, okay, do something, and this was the reward. So every time when we are filming, I'm just trying to read the signs that I'm receiving. You know, maybe this just means that I have to film it different. So the obstacles are usually the biggest blessing for me. When we did 66 seasons, we were planning to film 1 year or 1 season during the July of 2001. And the swimming pool is closed in 1st of September. And on 25th of August, my camera assistant said that unfortunately, he fucked up 10 rolls of film material. They were not packed properly, so they got light and we cannot use them, which was already filmed material. And I lost 3 days of work, and it was not possible to redo them because on 1st of September, they're closing the swimming pool. And for me, it was a huge depression, very bad times, but we had to start editing somehow. So we were editing. But when we were in the middle of the editing, I did some test screening and showed it to some friends, and they showed it to some other friends and the other friends. And the result was that they liked it and they offered us some more funding. So thanks to this mistake, I had a chance to film next 15 days in 2002. And thanks to this mistake, all these beautiful things that you saw in the movie, like the pregnant woman in 2001 and her baby in 2002, the circle of the life, the seasons, basically the fulfilling of the title, because it's 66 seasons, the changing of the life every year, was done. So I'm always thinking when something bad happens, okay, maybe this will turn this film or this live position to some interesting new way. I think that's it from my monologue. Now we can come to something that I like more, and it's a dialogue. So if you have some questions, I would be really very happy to answer them.
So thank you. It was really, really interesting, and we do have questions, and a lot of people were watching they said from France, from Ireland, so from different parts of the world. So the first question was, how do you decide whether you show the sound device or not? Does it have an importance?
Okay, I had no other chance. We were filming in a swimming pool, and I wanted to be all of my protagonists just in swimsuit, and you have no place to hide the microport when you are just on swimsuit. So basically we had to have the sound device in the shot. But then came the moment when the sound started to be an integral part of the film. So the soundman was a part of the film. There is a beautiful moment when one of the protagonists, one grandmother, is describing how she was learning to swim, that there was a swim master with a long stick as a boom, and she was on a rope at the end of the stick. And we were filming our boom, and basically she was at the end of it because she was not swimming, but she was speaking, and it was a very nice associative editing. So from that moment, we started to use a boom like a part of the film. And also the whole filmmaking process is quite an important and integral part of the film 66 Seasons.
Okay, thank you. Next question was, how did you find the lady who was watching the sky from the swimming pool?
Yeah, I just basically, if you are searching anything, you just have to speak a lot about it. So I was telling to all my family, all relatives, everybody, friends, we are searching somebody who saw it, who saw the bombs falling from the skies when she was on the swimming pool. And we got two people, actually, one man who was sunbathing and this woman who was swimming. So it was just word of mouth. We were speaking, asking permanently, and it happened.
Mm-hmm. The next one, do you have any suggestions, tactics, how to make the interviews to squeeze their stories instead of talking for hours?
I think first you have to know what they are going to speak about. So I would be not afraid to have a first interview, and usually to have this first interview without camera and without sound, because the memory is the best sorting machine for what is important and what is not important. For me, it was also very helpful that when we did cooking history, it was so huge that I had to record everything, also because I don't understand so well most of the languages. The languages that I understood, I had no money for assistants, so I had to write down the transcripts myself. So I listened what the people are speaking, was writing it down, and basically through my muscles in the hand, their story came to my brain. And because I had to, and even that is a big advantage, that I didn't understand the language properly. So I had to listen it several times to get what they are saying. So the rhythm of their speech, I get to my memory. And when you are speaking with them, for us, it was a very big help that we were filming on 60mm film. because this made some tension that this is really important, and the people they feel the energy, they feel your interest. It's like during any discussion, if you are much more better presenter if you see that somebody is watching you and understanding and smiling or not understanding even, like whatever. So because I'm really obsessed with this story and I'm really obsessed with these people, I was, and also I knew that 1 meter is $1. So I was basically hanging on their lips. I was very much concentrating on what they are saying and speaking. And when they were speaking bullshits, I just cut it with a provocative question. And so it's the art of a dialogue. It's each person is different. Also, each director is different. Me personally, I like to perform. As you see, I like to speak, and I like to have these dialogues. So for me, it's something like a natural thing.
Okay. Yeah, I think you have to be good at knowing the moment when to ask and what to ask to pave the road for the conversation where you want it to lead.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one was, how did you film the underwater scene with the cards?
With underwater camera, and we just asked the people to go underwater, and it was simple.
Okay. How long did it take at the end to film this movie? So only the filming without the preparation work?
For me, it's always together very much. So the 66 seasons, I started the preparation work in 1999, and the premiere was in 2003. And Cooking History, we started the preparation in 2004, and the premiere was in 2009. So usually it is 5 years.
Okay. Do you explain in details to the interviews why you do the scene you put them into, like what it symbolizes and things like that?
Yes, that's a very nice question. When we did Cooking History, I met personally these 106 cooks. Then I did this Sophia's Choice, which was really very hard. Who will stay in the movie and who is not in the film? And I selected more than 12 people. It was 18 people that we were filming with. And I came back to them. And it was a beautiful building of friendship, because usually they are used that the journalist is coming and then steal the story and never come back. And I came back to them. And we started to ask maybe more open, more private questions. Like it was not about the anecdotes and cooking and strategy. It was more about the feelings. And then I went back home, and then I came back for the third time without filming, just with my notebook. And during the third time, we tried to invent together the scenes, because I didn't know the place. So I asked, I want you to feel comfortable. For example, in Serbia, we were filming. There was a battlefield, and I had a Croatian cook from Kota 255, close to Lipik, and a Serbian cook. So basically, they were on the two sides of the same front, and I found them. They were cooking against each other. And I asked these people where they want to film, and the guy said, this is a place full of landmines, and this is my work now, and I want to film here. I said, perfect. And basically, he invented the symbolic of the place. And I asked the woman, because on the Serbian side, there were female cooks, and they said, this was a hotel where we used to cook. now it is completely destroyed because of the war, and we want to be there. I said, okay. So most of the things were even not my invention. Like, it was their ideas, and it was really created in a very close cooperation with the protagonists.
Okay. So there's a comment. It's not a question, but thank you so much. It was quite useful. And then the next question is, how do you control your protagonists if they start to act too much?
I have several tricks. Again, speaking about the first question about the speaking, like how to squeeze it. The important thing is that they have to feel comfortable in front of the camera. So I have, if they say something not correct because they are under the stress, and I know that, for example, it's not enough if they will say, and then I went to the front, but I need to know that then I went to the Soviet front because of the, and I know that they just forgot it. I never can stop them and tell them, stop, you fucked my shot, say it again. I have to be very nice to them. So I start to cough. I start to have my allergic. I'm sorry, we have to stop the shooting. It's because I cough. This is trick number one. Trick number two is the idiot boom operator. When I see that the interview is going bad, I just say, sorry, we have to stop, the boom is in the frame again. And of course, I pay him a whiskey at the end of the day, but he knows that this is the game. And when they are overacting, I just stop the shooting. And I know that it's not their fault, it's my fault, because I put them to some situation that it's not good for them. So I have to invent a different situation. I have a list of crazy questions. So I have a script where I know what they have to say, and under even every chapter, I have some questions that are really like super, sometimes incorrect to ask. But this is something that make them alive, for example, make them angry, make them thinking, or whatever. So when I had a very professional answer from one of the military cooks in France, who said he's not, because they were in Algiers, and he said, it's not political, I was just doing my job, I don't care about politics, I don't care about religion, I don't care about any ideology, I'm just a cook. I asked him, okay, so when you were under the siege and you had your dead comrades, so why you didn't eat them? He said, are you idiot? Of course we are not eating them. But come on, it is an ideology. In terms of nutrition, it's absolutely okay to eat our dead relatives. It's a basic of every religion that we are not eating our relatives, usually. So this was a moment when he started to think, and you can see in his eyes that he's thinking, and then you can ask the other questions. So it's always a dialogue. It cannot be just please tell this sentence. You have to create a playful moment, either in situation or either just in words or in the bird of ideas.
Thank you. I think this is very useful to a lot of people. So there was a question on Facebook. Where can we see your films?
Okay, it's I think all my films you can see on dafilms.com. I will send it to the Facebook, the links, DA Films.
Okay. Well, I think I will refresh again. I think these were the questions. Yes, I can't see now new questions. So yes. Well, would you like to add something else, or?
No, I don't think so. don't know.
Okay.
It's like,
then thank you very much. It was, I think, very interesting.
good.
So
Thank you for the possibility to speak, and hope to see you next year alive.
yes, hopefully.
Alive and live.
Yes. And thank you very much for everyone who we can't see now, but we know that they were there watching you and listening to you.
Good. Thank you very much. All the
Thank
best.
you.
Bye.
Bye.